As long as Bitcoin's below 64,600, like I said, unfortunately, I do have to remain with the short-term bearish bias, despite my personal opinion being, I really don't want to be bearish here. Bitcoin has rejected 64,600 yet again. So unfortunately, my short-term and medium-term bearish bias must remain. I don't actually want to have that, but ultimately rules are rules. And at the end of the day, I have made some new trades based upon that, especially with Bitcoin coming down below about 63,000 bucks today this morning. So I want to update on all of these things. Maybe we even go into a little bit of traditional markets as well. But first things first, let's go into the early morning ceremonies. And PPI has come in. And what do you know? 0.0%, pretty much in alignment with expectations. A little bit more on the softer side, I would say. And ultimately, Bitcoin not taking this opportunity to try an upside move. Kind of a signal in and of itself, I do expect. Other than that, we do see that that initial jobless claims have, in fact, seen the highest number, although it is still relatively a low number, but the highest number in many months now. So ultimately, kind of a good sign overall for the economy. But moving forwards from there, CME Fed Watch going into September has now massively, I don't know about massively, but it has significantly reduced the probability that we will see a rate hike in September based off of that data, and also in alignment with CPI from yesterday as well. And ultimately, we are seeing now about a 32% probability of a rate hike in September. As I've been saying on this channel, I don't think that there's going to be any rate hikes really this year, and September seems very unlikely at this point, unless if something crazy happens at Jackson's Holes, which I would not bet on, as we did go over a few days ago on Kalshi. I am going to be buying, or I did buy, I suppose, of course, no rate hike for September. And honestly, I'd feel pretty damn confident doing that for the rest of this year as well. Anyways, other than that, let's get into, of course, the coil, the big coil that Bitcoin's into right now. Like I said, slight short-term, medium-term bearish bias as long as Bitcoin's remain below that 64,600 pivot. But with Bitcoin rejecting 64,000 bucks on this morning's rally upon that PPI data coming in, I look at that as a pretty strong signal. So I did update my position with this. We're going to go into it once we get into the actual charts themselves. But for right now, a bit of, if you are going to be looking at a potential fake out, still would require Bitcoin to close a daily on CME above 64,600. That line in the sand has not changed really since the last couple weeks. And ultimately, when Bitcoin lost it on Monday, that was effectively the beginning of the short-term bearish bias. And Bitcoin now following through. So I really do have to entertain the not just possibility, but the probability, the slightly higher probability right now that Bitcoin could have a red August and what that essentially would look like. In fact, the back half of August has generally been not great for Bitcoin and markets in general. It's kind of the better time to be, skeptical and defensive on markets. And so I do want to get into the seasonality of this because we've done a little bit of a statistical study right here. And we found that when August is red, it's usually pretty damn bad on those last couple weeks of August. If we just look at August in whole, you're not going to really see that much crazy stuff going on. You typically see the first couple weeks of August slightly green, and the back half, slightly red. 1.4% versus 1.7%, respectively. But when we bifurcate that data between positive and negative closing August, and we only look at the negative side, well, when you have a negative August, it's the last 2 weeks of August that typically are down big and on average losing about 9.4%. So let's just go into the charts really quickly right now and look at what that would effectively mean coming into, the back half of August here, and about 9% down from where Bitcoin currently is at would put Bitcoin more or less on new lows, actually. Now, again, that is an average. Doesn't mean that it's going to be exactly on there. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, but that is what we have seen for the past little over 10 years now. So I do think that deserves some recognition at the very least. And realistically, Bitcoin is going to have a short-term downside move here. A backfill on the July open would make a lot of sense. So unfortunately, the short-term bearish bias and medium-term bearish bias must remain. It's actually just got a little bit stronger realistically, and it does strengthen the more that Bitcoin is below that 64,600 pivot based upon the Rev and Ribbons midband. Other than that, I have made some trades in traditional markets. Perhaps we'll go over that later if there is time. But like I said, this next sort of week spread between yesterday and the end of next week is really where I expect this downside to emerge, if it's going to be happening at all, which so far so good. I mean, there is no evidence here just yet that Bitcoin does not want to play out downside. In fact, quite the contrary, unfortunately. Looking at the daily time frame right here, we can see again Bitcoin losing the Rev and Ribbons midband. It got that quick move down to 63,000 bucks, which which was a short-term target for us, which now has been met. But here's the thing, the longer that Bitcoin's below that 64,600 number, the more and more likely we are going to see at least into the middle of the lower band one, which is 61,800. And that would naturally take Bitcoin below that very important July higher low that we saw at around 62,500 or so on a closing basis, meaning that we actually would have a flipping of the trend. And that means that you got a daily downtrend, plus Reverend Ribbons has lost that. And in terms of time in this move, we did go over to this chart over here for yesterday's video to just, to talk about this, but just to expand upon this, daily stochastic momentum and up is turning down right now. We can see the daily time frame is going to still show downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's below 64,700 more or less. So that daily Reverend Ribbons midband. Again, this was a rejection off of the regression that we drew out from the last few highs. We're talking about the high from middle of July with the high of late July, and then also the more recent high in early-ish August, coming in all along the same side. So I do look at this as, as holding some weight, obviously. And that's going to bleed into the 2-day time frame, which of course already is seeing downside momentum here as well. That one continues down as long as Bitcoin's below 64,320, and that one is going to be closing tomorrow. And then the 3-day time frame, which is closing tonight, is also freshly turning down as long and will be remaining with downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's below 65,300. So all of these things working with each other does suggest that the next week ish, we really do expect this thing to start going and more or less taking out that last previous higher low from late July / early August at about 62,500 or so. So this really is a time for the bears to to do their best if they will. And I positioned in such ways too. So let me just update on my options positions here. So last we looked at this. What did I do? I had bought back 10 of my short $6,000 call strikes right there, which expires basically tomorrow. And the rest of them are still open. These are more or less just all premium. So I'm going to close them after this video, almost undoubtedly, unless if something crazy happens. And then what I did for the $2,000 puts is last night before I went to bed, I did buy back 15 of these. So now I'm only short 15, boom, right there. And yes, okay, so that's what that looks like. Yep, okay. And ultimately I did take a short position as well on futures of 10 Bitcoins at 64,000 bucks or just below. It was on the rally to 64,000 bucks. I didn't get the actual high because I'm not perfect, but I did get about 64,850 right there for a 10 lot. So again, the fucking, I don't know why. Okay, let's just redo the strategy because for whatever reason, TradingView is not getting that right. Believe me, my maximum profit for this position it's definitely not positioned to the upside, like for fuck's sake. Anyways, let's go and add a new strategy because for whatever reason, I guess that one just ain't working, but we're going to do this with a covered call, actually, is how we're going to construct this. Okay, boom, right there. Again, I am short the $66,000 strike calls, which expires at the end of next week. And I did that for 500 bucks, and I still have 10 open. So there we go. And then I am, let's not add that just yet. And then, of course, I am short the 62,000 15 times only now. So let's do that. Okay, we got that on the board. Nice. And I'm short for about 475 average price. And now I have a short of 10 Bitcoins right there from 63,850. So let's put that in. Let's see, does that make sense? Yes, that is what the P&L curve should look like. Beautiful. Okay, so basically I want Bitcoin to not go above 64,800. Or sorry, about 65,000 bucks. And I don't want it to go below, before end of next week, 55,875. I'm okay with that. Basically, my profit zone is in here. And if Bitcoin remains within there, my maximum profit will be 30,625. This is what I love about options. You can position yourself even if my bias is wrong. Like previously, my bias was more or less Bitcoin on putting in a low here and working its way up. That was wrong, or at least so far it is wrong. But I'm able to position and still maintain a profitable position here with a little bit of know-how with options and combining that with, of course, in this case, futures. So again, I maintain that, look, if you are going to be a long-term, like career trader, learning options and combining that with spot or with futures it's a fucking superpower is what it really is. Yes, it requires worth a lot more in your account equity. I understand that that can be a strain for a lot of people, but look, at some point, you might have that equity. So I do think that it's worthwhile to learn. And shit, man, I do have a free TA and options 101 course. They're in the link description below. Literally costs you nothing, and it is all of the foundational, all of the foundational stuff, which honestly is what matters most. I mean, shit, man, if you can understand strangles, spreads, and covers, you got pretty much everything when it comes to options. You might not know that it's an iron condor, but you'll be doing it nonetheless. Anyways, yeah, so we got that. Let's see. Yes, and Bitcoin could obviously still make me bullish. It just has to reclaim that Rev and Ribbons midband at 64,600. And ultimately, I'd be happy to take a loss on that short stock if Bitcoin were to claim that number, and I would just add on to my short put strikes right there. But for right now, yep, that's really all that I got. Is it possible that Bitcoin does reverse from here? Yeah, but you really expect Bitcoin to not close below, especially about $63,000 by end of day. Other than that, it is looking like Bitcoin is having more risk to the downside than the upside right now. As far as, of course, prediction markets goes, head over to Kalshi. I can always check out, let's actually go to the hourly first. I'm curious what these are being priced at. Okay, very interesting. I'm giving you about a 30% probability to close above 63,100 by end of hour here. We got 7 minutes left to go, and Bitcoin is actually quite close to that. Not a bad bet, but I'm interested in the daily ultimately. The daily. So what are we looking at by end of day? By end of day, they're giving you about 55%, 54% probability of Bitcoin closing above $63,000. That would be for CME's closure, by the way, not for spot price action, but that is what we focus on typically on this channel. And Bitcoin above there or even around there, it's not going to look great coming into tomorrow, Friday, obviously, but it's a long day left to go. And most importantly, as long as Bitcoin's below 64,600, like I said, unfortunately, I do have to remain with the short-term bearish bias, despite my personal opinion being, I really don't want to be bearish here. But hey, it is what it is. Anyways, with that in mind, I'm going to continue my daily DCA with the old coins here. And of course, for Bitcoin, I'm going to buy $100 of the old coins on CoinDerp, because it is the cheapest place to buy spot Bitcoin as of this moment with my shill link, because my shill link does give you, what is it? Whoops, that is way far off market. My shill link does give you 80% off of spot trading fees, which is pretty fucking massive. Let me get a little bit closer to that bid, and we'll buy 100 right there. And of course, that's in the link description below. As always, when it comes to Coinbase, make sure that you're from the general accepted or acceptable geographies. At the end of the day, I'm working with Coinbase mostly because they're going to be introducing options to U.S. citizens, which, by the way, they already have perpetuals, but options on a crypto native exchange with futures already there. That is what I've been waiting for so long. This is what's going to allow me to actually really turn up, live trading on the channel. And also it's just going to allow me to keep everything in one place, which right now everything has to be bifurcated, which sucks. It is what it is, man. Anyways, go over and check out traditional markets. Oh, and by the way, Kalshi, obviously shill link is in the description below as well. I don't know. Should we take this trade right here? I actually don't know if I trade off of that. Let's see. Is Bitcoin likely to end above 63,000 today? I would say I would actually not take that trade either which way. My interests are in 64 as like a short-term pivot, but not that big of a deal. 64,600 remains the big one. As long as we're below there, I can't have that bullish bias that I personally do want to have. And you can see there is a bifurcation between what my opinion is and what my system actually tells me to do. I have to follow the system, because if I follow my opinion, I'd be fucking broke probably, or definitely. I mean, shit, man. My opinion is like a light in the wind. It doesn't matter. Anyways, I mean, really, realistically, no one's opinions matters, right? The only thing that matters is buys and sells in the order books, of which there's my $100 of Bitcoin right there. It has not been filled just yet, but we shall be patient. Anyways, yeah, let's go to traditional markets here really quickly. Let's see what SPY is doing. It is still up. We are still bullish on traditional markets. Nasdaq up, I can see already about double in terms of returns, up more than 1% for this morning. Ultimately, I have nothing bearish to say about this. Any sort of short-term pullbacks are, in my opinion, just that, short-term before likely trying higher. I'm still looking at this as a confirmed breakout from the multi-month consolidation that began in May and got resolved in early August. And I'm looking at this as having targets up to basically 8,000 and probably more over time as well. Just not bearish on these markets. And ultimately, if I was going to come up with an invalidation for bullishness, it would simply be below about 77.20 on SPY futures here. As long as it's above there, I'm just looking at this as another reaccumulation formation after a breakout leading towards new highs, which already we have new all-time highs this morning. Nasdaq futures benefiting a little bit more from this morning's move. Still looking at this move as likely to get back up to about 30,500, 30,700, whatever these highs are from here, essentially, and probably does follow SPY overall. It's just not as strong, unfortunately. And as far as the actual stocks that I did something in here, I bought a little bit more, small amount more of SHLD. I did this yesterday around the close. And while I actually do expect this one to probably pull back a little bit, probably pulls back to like $6 or maybe $6-7, that's fine. That's fine. I'm looking at this as a very long-term hold for me. This is, multi-year, maybe multi-decade hold, more or less. And then what else did I buy? Let me just reference my notes over here. Yes, indeed. Or actually, no, I put it in right here. There we go. I bought PAVE. That's right, my new ETF. This one I actually found out from a live stream a couple weeks ago. I put it on my list. I liked this short-term pullback that we saw back to about $58, so I bought it. Again, super easy to manage here. Again, a long-term position. Whenever I take positions in traditional markets, these are meant to be at least multi-month holds, and when it comes to ETFs, I mean, really realistically multi-years. But this being infrastructure development, I need something like that in my portfolio for effectively, well, exactly that sector. As far as the long term goes here, monthly time frame, still looking at new all-time highs for this thing. Monthly RSI, very much indicative of new highs coming, very, very healthy right here. I'm not really looking for this move to find a major, perhaps next macro top until we get into at least 80 plus read on the monthly RSI. Again, long-term hold here. Other than that, short term, where's my risk management? Below about $55.50. Super simple, super easy. Again, I don't try to complicate things in traditional markets. And then I did sell something as well. What did I sell? Let me reference it back on over here. Yeah, it was Rob T right on over here. And honestly, it's not because I don't like Rob T. I really like the robotics and AI sector. It's just I like other ETFs for this purpose. This one is not even bad, by the way. It's not even bad. Like, this is decent. Like, this is very likely to make new highs from here. It's really, really good. It's just I have better picks right now in symbol ROBRO, for example, and then also IBOT, which I'm looking to transfer that cash over there, basically. So those are the two symbols that I'm looking to allocate to, because I think that they are just better winners for right now. Anyways, other than that, I think it's a good place maybe leaving off on this video. Again, yeah, we'll end things on that note. Like I said, short-term, medium-term bearish buys for Bitcoin, unfortunately for me, has to still exist. I would be happy to let go of that and get and flip around, do a little flippy floppy back above 64,600. But until then, that's my positioning. That's what I'm looking for, and that is going to carry us into tomorrow, hopefully, in which we shall do another live stream. So if you want these videos in your inbox at the the best time, or you want to get invited to those live streams, consider live subscribing. We shall end on that note. I will once again wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.